Good evening, good evening. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
How's everybody? Thank you all for coming out on a Friday evening. You could be anywhere in our Commonwealth, but you're here with us tonight, so we thank you. This is a special evening. We're really excited about this dialogue here at Americans for Prosperity Virginia chapter. This has been something that we've been at for the last few months of planning. Any education freedom lovers here, can I get a round of applause? And education awesome. Well, at AFP, it's one of our priorities to ensure that parents have choice, ensure that children have the opportunity to go to a school that's best for their unique learning needs. And it's one of our priorities. We're fighting hard and pushing hard to make that a reality come this January in the General Assembly. Got some special guests tonight that we're excited to have a dialogue on educational freedom to keep everybody inspired about this issue that's continuing to plague our Commonwealth, continuing to plague our schools, and we're going to do something about it. Everyone in this room, there's hundreds of folks that showed up tonight on Friday to talk about educational freedom, but we're going to need the same energy, the same momentum to be even more inspired from this Virginia Ford story come January. Really happy to have Lieutenant Governor Earle-Sears in the house with us tonight. Lieutenant Governor Earle-Sears. Happy to have Miss Virginia Ford. For those of you who haven't heard the story, met her, you're going to hear a lot more and get a chance to hear from her tonight. We saw Glenn Sturtevant, who was here tonight. I think he's still here, or already left, but Glenn Sturtevant is here. Thank you, sir. We have a lot of our educational partners, VOA, Craig Sessa. I appreciate all the work that VOA does in this fight. We have Teach Ed tonight who's going to moderate the event. And just a quick snapshot, those of you who've heard of AFP and the work that we do, what we're passionate about, really is very simple and clear that we're about spreading freedom and opportunity. And we want to help all Virginians reach their full potential by spreading this force of freedom and opportunity throughout all communities to give Virginians the future that they deserve. And we say future because it's important that children have the opportunity to attend schools that really is best for their unique learning needs. We do this all throughout the country. We're happy to have one of our regional directors for AFP National out of South Dakota, Donna Hager, who's here. Donna, raise your hand so folks can acknowledge you. Donna's here. Donna is in the middle of this Virginia Ford meeting here. Donna and I were having a conversation at one of our American Prosperity National Retreats, and we were talking about our ESA fight here. Those of you who were fighting with us on the battlefield with the loss we had last year, we're coming back from win next year. Let's remember that. Donna was just offering some advice on things we could do because some of our state chapters have passed ESAs. Arkansas got it done last year. I just want to give a shout out to my brother Ryan, who's here, state director for Arkansas. And Ryan, thank you for all you do. Ryan was instrumental in getting ESAs passed in Arkansas last year, which was a phenomenal win for him. Ryan led the charge. But Ryan and Don were very instrumental in getting Virginia Ford. We had personal relationships with him. And here's the thing. Ryan drove 15 hours from Arkansas to bring Virginia Ford. So let's give a shout out to Ryan. So we just hope tonight you're going to hear a really great dialogue on inspiration. If you all haven't seen the film, please watch it. It is an emotional roller coaster. You're going to be laughing, you're going to be crying, you're going to feel inspired to really find that impulse in yourself to go fight for freedom and education. And this Virginia Ford, Lieutenant Governor, we're having a conversation before we came in here. And she said it's really about the kids. It's about what you're willing to fight for your children. And I thought that was just so powerful to hear from them. So we're going to have a great night. We're really excited. We're going to be live streaming tonight. We're going to send your questions in. You all saw some signs that are outside. We just snap it and get your questions in. But we're really excited about tonight. Thank you all again for being here tonight, continuing to support us and join us in our fight for freedom. With that, I want to get ready to show our video. Okay, that's right. Here we go. What we're going to do now is I want to bring up one of the best lieutenant governors in Virginia's history.
So I'm going to introduce Miss Virginia, and I'm tired. I'm not going to be on my feet very long. Good evening to you. Thank you for coming. Obviously, you're concerned about the state of education in Virginia. Otherwise, why would you be here? Some of you no longer have children in school, and yet it just shows your heart that you care. And of course, that's where it starts, in caring. And that's where it starts for Miss Virginia, Walden Ford. And all I have is my story, and it's what got me into running for lieutenant governor. After my call, I went, Lord, what am I going to run on? And it was education. Because education, you know my story, my dad arrived at the height of the civil rights movement, just 17 days before Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech, and from Jamaica. And he arrived with only $1.75 in his pocket. Just imagine that, coming with 7 quarters. What are you going to do with that? Well, he took any job he could find, and he put himself through school and started his American dream. And then, of course, he came and got me, and here I now stand second in command in the former capital of the Confederate States. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, and so education lifted my dad out of poverty, and education lifted me out of poverty, because I have to find my own way in this world, and education will lift all of our children out of poverty. We just have to make sure they have that opportunity to get that education. And so when I was looking to run, and I saw these scores, and I said, well, that's it. That's what I'm going to run on. I was told, well, Winsome, education isn't polling very well. And I thought, well, that's all I got. And that was enough, because after a while, it started polling well, didn't it? But these numbers, I didn't need a poll for to tell me that this is why we need change. I saw the NAEP scores, and you know, the NAEP scores is the National Assessment for Educational Proficiency. It's the gold standard for all of Virginia, all of America. It tests the children at the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th grades. And it tests them in 5 subjects. I really only concern myself with 2. Reading comprehension and math. And I saw that by the time the children in Virginia reached the 8th grade, when it came to math, 37% of Asian children could not do math. 45% of white children. 70% of Latino children. And this number I'm about to tell you brought tears to my eyes. 84% of black children were failing math. And by the way, 85% of them were functionally illiterate by the time they were in 8th grade. I thought, what are we going to do? Somebody had to change that. Somebody had to care. And so I figured that would be me. And so here I am, and I thank you, Miss Virginia, because you also cared. Your story, her story, which she will tell you much better than I will, begins with just being a mom and seeing that her child, William, was failing spectacularly. And so she had to fight for William. And it shouldn't be that you had to fight your own government to ensure that her child was receiving the proper education that he deserved, especially because she was part of the Little Rock group, who herself had to integrate the schools in Arkansas. And so how ironic that here it is, you're fighting the very same system all over again. But you persevered. And we're so glad you persevered, because here you are today to tell us how to do it. And ladies and gentlemen, she gave Congress the lot for. Because when you fight, it takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot of sweat. It takes a lot of gumption. And it takes a lot of praying. And so here we are tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to watch the film first. Yes, and then we'll move on from there. Thank you.
Life story told on the big screen.
Sir, when you said a lot of things, I'm a politician, but what you did so that low-income students could go to private schools. Well, I'm going to do that here. You have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting that.
The new movie, Miss Virginia, tells the unlikely story of Walden Ford, who, as a single mother in Washington, D.C. in the early 2000s, fought to create a federally funded private school voucher program that would allow poor kids, including her son, to escape family public schools. Against long odds and institutional hostility, she succeeded and is played with fiery passion by Orange's The New Black's Winsome.
Every time she says, my name is Virginia Walden, I freak out. I just go, oh my, she used my name that way. So it's surreal. I never ever thought that anybody would even notice my fight. So it also, I mean, we were a backpack group of parents going up on the hill talking to members of Congress to help save our kids. And so it's surreal and unreal to me.
In your experience with the DC public schools and your son, what was the essential thing that they were failing by?
I think he was just one of those kids that was going to fall through the cracks, if somebody didn't intervene. I remember going to school one day to talk to a teacher about a class that he didn't see he was having trouble with, and she didn't even know who he was. She had 40 kids in her class.
Walden Ford's own backstory as a student is both harrowing and inspirational. She was among the early waves of black kids that integrated public schools in Little Rock, Arkansas in the late 1950s, an experience that informed her actions as a parent.
I remember my dad saying, "You go to Central?" And no, I'm not. I'm going to the black high school. And he told me, you have a responsibility to go to Central and do well because you have younger siblings and the world will look at you based on the fact that you paved the way for your younger siblings. And even at 14, I was 14, I took that really seriously. And I really believe my parents were people that served the community. And I remember thinking, that's all, I want to make a difference. So I was 14, I knew that I was going to do things that would make a difference, that I was going to serve my community. But it was based on my parents. My grandfather was a slave who bought his brothers out of slavery and ran a bakery in Little Rock. That's how he raised some money. And knowing that I had that kind of legacy in my family certainly impacted who I am and who my sisters. But service was a big deal. When Daddy got the job in Little Rock School District, he was the first black assistant superintendent for Little Rock School District. The Klan and cross and all that. I did the Roxrow. And I remember my dad saying, don't be mad. Change the world.
There's a bit of irony in that as a child, as a young person, you fought for access to the public schools. As a parent, you were fighting for the right of exit from the public school system. What's the consistent through line in those actions?
in both actions, we're fighting for quality education. During the civil rights movement, when we were trying to get into public schools, it was not to get in the building, it was to get what was in the building. You know, we were taught with books that were oftentimes outdated, science labs where 20 kids would use one microscope, or those kinds of things that really keep kids from getting what they really need.
Separate but equal was a lie. It was separate.
Exactly, yeah. When schools started changing and then deteriorating, I remember saying, this is not acceptable. Actually, I say in speeches all the time to African Americans, I know why you're mad at you coming out of public schools and stuff. I know how you felt. I was there. And, but do you really want our kids to stay in bad schools? You know, because we fought 60 years ago to build another building. That's not what we want. So you gotta get it in your head. This is something different. I remember telling Ted Kennedy one time, you know, your brothers fought, you know, for us to get into traditional public schools. And why are you fighting against us? Getting out of these say schools because they're bad.
Now, those up on the hill, they said we would fail. They say that we all don't care about our kids. But they could not be more wrong.
One of the most persistent and paternalistic criticisms of parental empowerment in education is that poor and educated parents simply don't have the background or the intelligence to make informed decisions for their kids. Walden Ford is having none of that.
Every time we went to a meeting in the communities that we were serving for low-income communities in Washington, and I would ask Q&A, you know, we do a Q&A, and I'll say, what do you want from a child? Low-income parents would come to a list of what they wanted for their children. And they were articulate and passionate, and it was amazing to hear them speak about what their desires were, and what they would hope for their children if their children had an opportunity to go to a school that served them.
What's the basic metric of a successful school in a choice environment for you?
When you walk into a school, and kids are school, and they're engaged, and they're safe, and parents are involved, that's the key to a successful school. They have equipment in the library.
So that kind of stuff is more important than test scores or...
No, I think you do have to test it. I mean, I think you have to determine where they are and what they need to learn. But I think that you can't define their whole existence by test scores. I think there are a lot of things that go along with it. With these opportunity scholarship program, initially used the fact that kids were safe and parents were happy and they were graduating at 20% above the rate of DC public schools. That was way more important than test scores. That were going to, you know, people never did understand it when our kids were in those schools, they were behind them, so they had to catch up. And so test scores in the early years are sometimes just not correct, you know. And the same kids, when he graduated without the department. But in DC public school, his test scores were 3 or 4 levels below whatever grade he was in. And I used to like fight him to go to school. I'd drop off school and he'd leave. You know, I would drive away and he'd just be gone. I didn't call. For school said he wasn't there. But when he was moved to private school, he liked it. He liked going there. He would jump up and get ready for school. And I asked him, why are you acting like that? Okay, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. When are you going to do something silly? You know? And he'd say, Mama, and 13 years ago, but he'd say, Mama, for the first time in my life, I believe others care about me learning other than you.
You should be.
It's on. It's on. Mr. Junior, if you want to just give us some good words about how seeing that opportunity made you feel.
You know, every I see those interviews and stuff, I think about what could happen had I not made the choice to follow. And it was hard. And when I look at my children today, you know, it was worth every moment. So writing these interviews makes me cry, mostly because I know what was going on with me. You know, we as parents have to fight. You know, we have to become, I told Eric today, we have to become warriors, soldiers. That's what I think in these kind of interviews. And I don't know if you understand all of them, but, you know, we have chosen to go in so many other ways. In the film, you see him, his name is James in the film, but his brother in the screen is legal stuff. You know, they had to change his name. He was at Iraq when the film was made, and they couldn't get a legal response from the battlefield. So we named it. But, you know, it is interestingly enough, William was out of school and in the military. He's a Marine Corps. He is a Marine. He touched me all the time. He served 8 years, 3 months. He's an amazing young man. And he tells me, when he's found out I was coming in, I told him you've been in the Marine Corps. He said, first take her home. And then he said, she must be really strong. And I said, yeah, well, I heard she is. And he said, to tell you something. You are dying. Yeah. but we had to learn how to be warriors. We had to be fighters. We had to stand up to people and say, these are our kids and we're not going to stop talking. So that's what it is. The movie, I've seen the movie probably 100 times. Because, and not because I'm writing and all that, but because sometimes I watch it just to inspire myself, or if I'm going to talk to a parent, and I go back to that time, you know, and what we did, and what we were able to do. You know, parents are the vital ingredient in getting school choice legislation passed. Parents have to stand up, parents, and be heard. The mantra is use your voice. It's simple. You know, stand up. We know our children better than anybody. We know what they need. We know how they learn. We know what will encourage them to thrive. We are the first teachers of our kids. So we have every right to be involved in the fight to make sure they have everything they need educationally. I wish I had children living here in Richmond, but I still here. And because we also want, and this is funny, President Junior, you know, we pray for Christians. And so we pray in the morning, when we drop parents off at the legislature. We pray in the evening, when we pick parents up and go home. We pray in the alleys when there is a vote. And so we won the DC Academic Scholarship by one vote. And we had just said a prayer, and I know God did that. And that's what I see. I go back, I remember. You know, there are those in this room that went to the battle at that time. Michael Benjamin, others, and it just takes you right. And that's what I want to do for Virginia. I want you to hear me. Hear me. Fight.
That's right. Right.
I definitely want to thank you for your inspiration. God did it.
Yes.
Just a little bit of my history before we jump into this Q&A. I was a single parent. Children were in public school.
didn't think about, again, that I needed to be active because I knew when I trained my children at home that the purpose for them going into that environment is for you to get access to an education. But then when, I started getting calls every day, you gotta come get him, gotta come get him. He won't sit still. He will not sit still. And I thought, well, him not sitting still might mean something. So let me go and have this conversation. Let me go and have this conversation. And I was dismissed. And that is what I had to say, these are my children. I am responsible for what they learn. If you would rather focus on making him sit down, you're not educating him. You're not educating him. And so, long story short, I got on the school board. I was actually inspired by President Obama in 2012. I said, if he gets 4 more years, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand up. Served on the Richmond City Public Schools Board. And at that time, there were 132 divisions in the state of Virginia. It ranked 129. I looked at the information the other day. There are 135 school divisions in the state. And Richmond City Public Schools sits in the top, does not. That's a misnomer, that's a mistake. It sits in the bottom 3. I've been advocating for parents who all they want is access to the best education for their children. And unfortunately, for some of those parents, they've been concentrated to zip codes where leadership doesn't feel those folks have any value. And so we're fighting against an old mindset. Public education is not the only opportunity that parents have access to ensure that their children are thriving. And as I look out in this audience, I don't see a whole bunch of parents that look like me. But I promise you we're coming. Enough. Enough. So I'm going to jump right into these questions for you all. So, Lieutenant Governor, what do you think is the biggest barrier to education opportunity in Virginia?
Do you really want me to answer that question?
Yes, I do.
Unfortunately, it should not be a political issue, but it is. And it shouldn't be because we're talking about lives, we're talking about children, we're talking about their future. We're talking about our children, and how is it that it should be so political when all parents want is to be able to decide where their children should attend school? Why should that be controversial? If a parent wants to make a decision to keep the child in this school or that school or homeschool or whatever it is, some hybrid, who am I to stand in the way of that parent? Makes no sense, except we're really talking about power. And when you're talking about power, well, now we understand that, those who hold power do not give it away lightly. You have to fight to get your power back. And so that's what we're doing. That's what we're all doing. And the problem for me is I see so many of them in politics who have their children in private school but say, no, you can't put your child in private school or homeschool or whatever. And if they do have them in public school, they generally have a tutor. Don't be fooled. They have a tutor because their child isn't learning as much as the next child isn't learning. And if they do have them in public school, again, point number 2, it's because they're in a good school. Because they can afford to live in that good school zip code. So make no mistake about it. The zip codes, when it comes to education, is the new red line. So, Miss Virginia, what I say now is this school choice is the new Brown versus Board of Education fight. As you said, it wasn't so much that in your day you were trying to get in the public school. No, you were trying to get what was in the public school. That's what you wanted. It wasn't the brick building, it was what was contained in that brick building, and that's what we're still fighting for.
Keeping kids in buildings that no longer have those resources. And we're saying, y'all fought to get in this, you guys saying this, no matter whether it's falling apart, or they don't have any books left, or the furniture needs replacing, or whatever. You gotta stay. Because people fought to get in these schools, which I think is just silly. You know, I don't want to keep my children in places that are falling apart. I want kids, the parents, to have resources and the ability to put their children in educational environments that just work, you know. And so we do have to fight. I've been doing this for 20 years. In 2024, we'll celebrate 20 years of fighting for the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program. President Bush, George W. Bush, signed on January 23rd, 2004. And somebody said, you come to DC? Oh, yes, I will be in DC. Because I think the parents and everybody that was involved, I think we have to celebrate. It's just not been easy 20 years. People have continually tried to get rid of this program. We lost it a couple of times. And the people that we aligned ourselves with, who were Republicans, said, you're not going to lose this program. They stood with us. And so I used to tell parents, you know, when President Obama got elected, the first thing they said was, ooh, we got good. You know, probably put more money into the program. Within 2 months of being in office, he announced that they were not going to fund this program anymore. No new children would be able to get into it. It would fail. You know, they were going to allow kids in it to stay in it, but that's how home lasts. And so I had to tell the parents who had probably voted for the first time in their entire lives that he wasn't going to save this program. And people cried. But the next day, they met me at the Department of Education, and we protested for 2 weeks. That's what we wanted. I think they got tired. You know, hundreds of them. So what I'm saying is, you got to be willing to make the sacrifices it takes parents. You're going to have people around you that are going to be wonderful and supportive. You have a government that's amazing. I see that now. And I've known you an hour. And I'm going to be here right now. And, but, you know, so let those people support you. You have got to fight. You got to stand up, you got to use your voices, you got to say, I am not going to sit around quiet and allow my children to not be educated. I'm just not going to do it. And you people will be scared, and believe me, I was scared. I know what these people do to me. But my mouth never stopped moving. Ever. I talk to anybody that will listen to me on the street, in the store, in barbershops, in hair salons. You know, I go to the school board offices, and this word is simply just too down. I go to congressional offices and just sign my name with 30 parents. And they couldn't just turn us aside. They couldn't say, this is something frivolous, because after a few months it became very clear that we were not going to do it. But it was intense. You know, I hope all of you see the movie is a really good representation of our fight. But I was telling somebody, it was way hard. You know, I don't really think it was easy. It was that easy. It was not. You know, but it was worth every moment. We went to the hill every day, at 2 o'clock. You know how we went at 10? Because we took the kids to school first. And we left every day at 2 o'clock. You know what? We had to go pick up the kids. And because we want our kids to be in school. And we did it every day but Friday, because Ernest goes home on Friday. And but we found something to do. So, I'm telling you all this to say, despite what you might think, or you might think this is so unreal or surreal, this really happened. And it's one, when I started, all I was trying to do was fight for my child. That's what I wanted. I wanted William to not be overlooked. I wanted somebody to say, this is my kid, he's going to do well. And in doing so, I met parents who wanted the same things for their sons and daughters. And it was amazing how it became a movement. You know, before I even knew it. But it was not, it was from the support of members of Congress, legislators, it was from the support of local elected officials, it was from the support of schools, particularly the Archdiocese of Washington was amazing, right? And it was from just loads and loads of people that said, if you would understand, we'll set aside. By the end of the year, I think Congress passes just to give us all the maps. And we passed the Congress, and because we started in January, as I said, and it was an amazing experience. I was lunch when they told me. I'm finishing and I'm going but it was like, we did it. So parents, you can do this. But you gotta be a warning.
You know, so as you were speaking, you talked about Congress and things like that. And, you know, it's not to be about voting. It really has to be about going out to vote for individuals who support the parents' right to choose. So I'll share a story with you real quick before I lead into this next question. And I'm not picking on public schools. I'm only giving you all the facts about what's happening inside one of the public schools right here in the capital. So we've got an election coming up, and we often use our schools for those elections. The electoral board in the city of Richmond has decided that 2 of those schools are unfit for individuals who even go in for 1 day to vote because of the whole. And we have individuals who will not support parents choosing to bring those children out of those environments. Mandatory attendance. So you don't send them for 14 days to be impacted by a building that is inferior, environmentally unsound. You lock the parent up and you say, child's got to keep coming here. Child's got to keep coming here. And that's what I think choice brings to our parents. It's going to empower them to be able to say, it's not good enough if you are going for one day, it for sure is not good enough for my children to be in 180 days. So in thinking about that, knowing that we want to support parents, understanding their rights, we want parents to understand their choices. All you have to do is go to the Virginia Department of Education website. There are several choices that parents can take advantage of. Many of them are public. But it's such a fight. It is such a fight. Every day it is a fight. I'm telling you, I advocate for these parents who are fighting every day. So what is the biggest lesson you can share, Ms. Virginia, with us about how do we get education opportunity in Virginia the way you were able to make it happen in DC?
Where you align yourself with the kindergarten, and you align
Pick up your mic.
with other supporters.
Use your mic.
You align yourself with the kindergarten.
Woo!
Align yourself with organizations that care about children. You go to your legislators. You know, the beauty of it being in the state is you have both of these guys. And so you allude to the fact that they will not give their vote if they don't at least have a discussion with you about education reform. And you just keep doing it over and over again. I mean, everybody that I've ever known that worked and fought for education reforms, Michael Benjamin, I've known since I started. He was a young man in his 20s, and he isn't anymore. So you have to make sure you listen to people to get important. In Milwaukee, I've been know a lot. I made sure Milwaukee was the first school church organization in the 90s. And Zakia Courtney was the parent organizer. And she helped me understand that I had to inform parents, teach parents how to fight. You know, most of us have gone through years of our children being in school, kind of being told to step back and let everybody else take care of our kids. We're nice parents, and we love our children, but we couldn't give them what the school is. And in some cases it's not, but in most cases it is not. We have every right as parents to speak out for our children, to say, my child is not mine. What are we going to do about it? You know, and if you get a silence or dismiss, you move the child to another school. But we got to provide resources for parents to be able to do that. I mean, we all mentioned that the biggest issue is the schools in certain zip codes are not, there's nowhere to move. You know, when William got kicked out of the private school because I couldn't pay it. And I tried, I really did try, but I couldn't. And I remember in my grief of seeing my child doing so well in the school, and he was grief. I said, no other parent should ever have to experience what I'm feeling now. And I guarantee you, 20 years later, I still feel it. It just hurts me that I couldn't keep him in this. Okay, he done well. I mean, he done real well. But I just think I could better be with him. And so we just have to fight. You know, I don't want to make it sound simple because the fight ain't easy. The fight is hard. It's tough. It'll hurt your feelings. It'll make you cry. It'll make you stay up all night long wondering what you could do now. You know, you got to have leaders that are willing to take this and work out strategies, and you got to be able to say no to people and yes to people. You got to get up at 7 in the morning and take parents to all kinds of places you've never been to, and take pictures and support the people that support you. And for many of the parents in our fight, we went from 100 to 2,000. And many of the people in our fight had never been to the nation's capital, ever. They lived in DC, but they never been up there. So there was a fear associated with going to the hill, there was a fear associated with legislators, members of Congress. It was scary. So, but you gotta forget that fear. And the only thing you have to think about is, I'm doing this for William or Katie or Joycelyn or Gracie or some other beautiful child that needs a better chance. So again, you gotta build an army. You gotta learn how to get along. You know, they say parents can form groups. We got a lot of chaos. You gotta figure it out. If you want these things to stand, I am a good Christian woman. And when they would get to fuss, I would say, this time, and breathe. and sometimes parents would be like, she is crazy. And we're not gonna do this. We're not gonna be what they expect. Parents, this is everywhere, black, white, you don't matter. To not get along. And so we have to figure out those kind of things. I'm going to send Lieutenant Governor a book I wrote when our legislation first came. Oh, yeah, I have to say that. And you should get it on Amazon. Voices, Choices, and Second Chances. It is a handbook about how to fight these fights, how to organize parents, how to get people talking. It has forums in there. I wrote it after the legislative fight because I would go pick up the newspaper, and the newspaper was saying local elected officials, members of Congress were successful in getting the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program passed. And every paper I put down going, y'all, if parents have not been there, y'all don't do this great. And so I decided that along with some people that were helpful financially, that I would write a book for parents. So this is a book for parents. And some parents have told me who have carried out successful legislative fight that it really helps. So, those are the kind of things we have to do. We have to be willing to share the information. We have to be willing to be a family. There are 2,000 children in DC that can't be grandma. There are 2,000 parents in DC that can't be mama. I get very confused, but and they love me like that. And that's what your leadership has to be. It has to be somebody that's willing to stand up and say, I'm doing this for the children of the district. By the time, you're going to say you heard this with children of Virginia. By the time our scholarship program passed, my kids were grown. And somebody said, why do you say this? Because you started fighting for your own child. You finished fighting for everybody else's. And that's
Madam LG, I want you to piggyback off on that. We've heard a lot about the fight. What is the likelihood of getting school choice passed in Virginia?
Well, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to take a totally different outcome in November. That's the truth. If we do not win the Senate, and if we do not keep the House, it's not going to pass. That's just the way it is. Elections have consequences, and if people don't think that this is what you want, then it won't go through. And I want to talk something about, piggybacking on what you said, the schools are not accredited. Not really, the public schools. In fact, what we did in Virginia before we were elected in 2021, the previous administration, and school board, Department of Education has so lowered the test scores that it appears that they have passed. But if we had kept it at the same level as it had been when I was on the school board, we would be like Baltimore, where you see the kids are failed. But here's the thing, we have kids in schools that are really not accredited, and yet we force homeschoolers and private school to be accredited. How does that work? And if the students do not pass the test, then they cannot homeschool them any longer, must put them in public school. You didn't know that part? Yes. Yes, they have to pass, homeschoolers every year have to pass the test, some accredited test. And if they don't pass it, can't homeschool them anymore, gotta put them in public school, the public school that's also failing. Think about that. And then another thing is, and I'm tired of hearing this argument, that this scholarship, ESA's parent school choice that we want is for rich parents, folks. Do you think rich parents are waiting for a government program to decide where to send their children to school? Of course not. They're gaslighting us. Rich parents have already made that choice. And then the last thing on this financial piece is, so the other argument that we hear is public money shouldn't go to private institutions. And I want you to remember this because this is the argument. Just ask them, well, what is Medicaid and Medicare? Isn't that public money that goes to private doctors and hospitals? Yes. And what is SNAP food benefits? Isn't that public money that goes to private grocery stores and 7-Elevens? Of course. And, Head Start, pre-K and post 12th grade. That's public money that goes to private institutions. And then when it comes to Section 8, that's public money that goes to private landlords. So, they'll throw arguments at you, and you've just got to be ready. And I know I said final, but we're in church, so this is my 5th close.
Good.
None other than Randy Weingart, who is the president, as you know, of the American Federation of Teachers, has her own charter school. The president of the American Federation of Teachers, the union, has a charter school in New York. And she, as I read it in the New York Post, was helping to keep another charter school out of an empty public school building so that her charter school could get into that building. So you see, they fought charter schools, these unions did, and now the teachers union president has one. So maybe we get this thing passed, maybe the teachers union president will have a private school. Think about it. And this is my 6th close, and then I'm gonna say this. You all know this is all hypocrisy. You saw that the teachers union president in Chicago sends her child to private school and lie about it. And this was just, 3 weeks ago that we saw it? It was 3 weeks ago? Come on. If we investigated these people, we would see the hypocrisy. So I can do what I want to do. I didn't be the president, but later for everybody else.
Exactly. So, then when you think about your educational plans for Virginia, thoughts about how it's going to impact homeschool, private school, public, with regard to, mandates, that any children that leave the public school system can take those education dollars.
So speaking of education dollars, since we're in Richmond and thereabouts, about how much would be the tuition to attend a public school in Richmond? I think it's about $19,000.
Close to 25.
All right then. That's a lot of money. That I know there are some private schools that charge a whole lot less, and they have better results. But the bill that we wrote, and I can't say I wrote it, there are a lot of people involved in it. And the ESA that we were carrying was that 2/3 of the money would stay with the public schools, and only 1/3 would follow the child, because, we're trying to figure out how can we get this through, because how did you say we can't, when somebody said, well, you're not helping all children or something like that? Tell us about
When we had started fighting for the executive scholarship program, we had a really tough time. They said those same things, that the public schools were going to be in trouble, the private schools were going to be in trouble. So the forms of the legislation, really against me, said, we'll make everybody get money, and then I understood it. So it's called a 3-sector initiative, and everybody got money. The public schools got money, the charter schools got money, and the private scholarship program began with the third, which still is encouraging. And it kept people from saying that we were somehow hurt the kids that were in those other schools. So when we were the principal of the school, and a lot of these guys said, we're hurting the public schools, we're hurting charter schools as well. And I said, people have to read the legislation. If you read it, you see that that's what's occurring. Everybody is benefiting from, and additionally, in our legislation, DC was able to keep the money in the memo of understanding that first year. And so they had a whole bunch of money. I think we had $14,000 per kid, and the scholarship was about $6,500. The first year was $7,500 for high school. So, they try to get the best way to create a way to get around these things is to make sure that you, in your legislation, you respond to negative questions with positive answers. Does that make sense? And we responded positively. In the legislation, we wrote it in. So there was no reason for them to fight, because they said, oh, the answer to that question is no. So don't have any more questions. It's okay. Like Lieutenant Governor was saying, a lot of these people have kids in high school. We're talking about the district of the representative, 400 plus representative, 100 senators. Don't they go to decent public schools? And they get NBC. So we were able to say to them, when your children start going to private schools, then there will be more. So Senator Durban from Detroit, right? He was our biggest opponent. And we found out that not only did his grandchildren go to private school, his children went to private school, and he went to private school. And we used that. We said, how can you keep our kids from being able to be beneficiaries of a scholarship to go to private school when you yourself have been able to take advantage of it. Why did you send your child to private school? Because the choice schools were not good enough, right? You know, when President Obama signed the letter to Silver Fringe, we gave $40,000. We gave we gave kids in Silver Fringe power. The Silver Fringe are paying their full tuition, but it's the scholarship fund. But if they had succeeded in stopping the scholarship, those 5 kids would have had to leave because the agreement was Silver Fringe would pay whatever was left over after the scholarship payment. So they didn't have time to pay. Silver Fringe is a great school, so they didn't want to come out with it. And all likelihood, the kids would have to leave. So I want to hop in and say, I am really proud of you and Michelle for sending your children to Silver Fringe. It's a really great school. You are really showing that you're good parents and they're a really good education. And then I said, well, why can't I get this for you? You are literally stopping our children from going there. So I got to call for this domestic policy guy to tell me to tell me to retract.
Right, so 2/3 of the money would have stayed with the child, and only one would have stayed with the building.
Yes.
Even though the child was not there. And 1/3 would have gone and followed the child wherever the parent thought would be the best educational opportunity. And that still couldn't even, we still couldn't even get a vote. Imagine that. You, public school building, you have 2/3 of the money, the child is not there, the class size is reduced, everything that you said you wanted, and yet, you still won't let the child go. That's it. They will not let your child go. I mean, that's the thing. When it comes right down to it, you want your child to decide on a different type of education, and they will refuse. They will not let your child have that opportunity. We own this child. This is the public school building, this building, and this building only.
There it is. There it is. Because when I think about, again, I can only speak to my experience. I can speak more often to people who look like me and the challenges that they were having. And I think about having this conversation with the grandparents. When I go into public housing, and we've got 5 generations that have been concentrated. But then as soon as we start to talk about choice and private schools and maybe homeschool, it becomes a fight. Because I just don't believe that some folks have gotten past associating private schools, associating choice with vouchers. So let's talk about that. This choice is not vouchers. It is not. So, and we're gonna, I'd like for both of you all to kind of take that on. Let's talk about how do we empower, educate folks that not only do they change their minds, they change their hearts.
No, I mean, I think you really have to talk to people. We ran into those same kind of circumstances where people, as soon as you started talking about vouchers, when we started out fighting for vouchers, when we ended up fighting for scholarships, I'm still confused. You know, I try to say scholarships, and sometimes I say vouchers. Because so what? What's the difference? You know, so you say parents, you get vouchers for parents say, Sherry, wait.
Yes.
You know, you learn well. I was trying to prepare. You know, I went to college on federal funding. It was like the rest of the school, and my parents said they do whatever they could to get us ready for the college. And so when we say to three generations or four generations of parents that are wondering what to do with their children is if you want your child in a situation where they will thrive, where they will learn, you need to start listening. You know, where do you want your child? You think we had an easy time getting parents to sign up for 146 private schools in DC participating in these activities. It's a lot of private schools in DC. And getting parents to meetings or information meetings. One of the things that I found that was really helpful was my organization, which was DC Parents, and parents really trusted us. We took a responsibility of going to the school, seeing what they were about, and sharing it with the parents, so it helped them make choices. Again, a lot of work, but necessary. You know, parents heard these stories. These white schools do not want our black children. Our black schools don't want our white children. Or the Hispanic schools don't want Asian. It was just silly rumors. So we plan to go visit the schools. We interact with the staff and the students and the parents. We take the parents that have chosen those schools to the schools with us. And we be a mediator between the parents and the schools. And what we found was that the 146 schools that chose to be in our program were excited about finally having a chance to create a diverse school, to learn about other cultures. You know, some of them had kids from other countries, because, you know, DC has a million embassies. But some of those schools had never had a chance to interact with black kids or Hispanic kids or whatever. And so we would talk to them about, we would have the kids talk. And what we learned, and the parents said this to me, is Miss Jenny, thanks for going, but that lady was saying the same thing I was saying about my kid. And so invariably we've learned that everybody was speaking the same language. They had just gotten so accustomed to debating it that they weren't listening. So listening is really important. So as you build organizations, as you build parent groups, and you really have to build them, you know, and get parents involved and get teachers. You know, we had amazing teachers, public school teachers that did service for us. If you ever see pictures from rallies in DC, they were probably done by these public school teachers. Because they saw the family to schools, and they loved their kids, and they wanted to get them in educational environments that would work. I had more than one teacher say, please do something to help this child get out of here, because he's never going to pass in school. More than one. So it's about getting up in the morning and deciding that you are not going to sit still and let another child fail. Period.
You know, I'm thinking about, you said it's $25,000 if you were to pay tuition to go to Richmond Public Schools. And I'm thinking, if you were to hand a check to a parent and say, in public housing, the ones who are finding you and say, here is $25,000 for you to send your child to any school. I bet you they wouldn't send them to the school they're in now. It would get right in their heads immediately. Wait a minute, $25,000? Is my child learning? Well, why would I keep doing this? They would make different choices. Listen, there are some public schools that are outstanding. This is not even against public schools. This is about the parent. The parent making the decision. If you still want to take your $25,000 and send them to public school, then that's your choice. If you want to do homeschool, then that's your choice. If you want to do public, private, whatever, parochial, then that's your choice. But it's not the government saying, you know, we have the GI Bill and veterans. That's public money that goes to private colleges and universities and vocational schools. We have the Pell Grants, you know, for low income. That's public money. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then when you're talking about the past, which is what unfortunately those who have power and want to remain in power, they bring that up all the time. And we had a bill come through for the governor was pushing lab schools. Again, opportunities, charter schools, lab schools. When black men couldn't get into schools, lab schools were, and so many of the black people today, older black people, they went to lab schools. And yet, when we put that forward in Virginia as an option, do you know that those legislators who themselves went to lab schools fought us? They fought it. But you went to a lab school. Why can't we have lab schools again for children, for parents? It would still be a public school. It's like they fight charter schools, they fight that, they fight.
Anything you want to do, they fight this. So they don't even sit and listen to you. Or any of us. That's why the voices have to be loud. You know, we are Minnesota here, they had to listen to us. Because we took over office buildings. We took over, what is it, our society. They needed to listen to us. I remember one legislator, when they were in the House saying to me, you have a lot of people up there. I guess I need to think about what you're talking about. And he became a big supporter. You know, he found a way to all of us and talk to him about our kids. I mean, you gotta talk, but you gotta be dignified and gracious and loving, and you gotta say sweet. I'm right side, and I have come there and legislate sweet. You know what I'm saying? You need to listen to this. And they would say, yes, ma'am. And I would pray that because, being kind to people takes very little effort. And when you're trying to get something done and trying to get people to hear you, then just be kind, and give them as much information. I told the parents all the time, don't walk in there with some false stuff that you just heard. Internet is not always true. And going there with the question. Going there with information that is true, check your sources, because the first time you say something in an interview that it's not true, and somebody can check, you lose credibility. You'll never be able to testify. And so we make sure those kind of things occur. But it is hard. I still have memories of some of those days. I still dream about how mean people can be. But then I look at Tiffany Dempsey, who got her PhD from Syracuse University last January. And I love saying, thanks, Dr. Winsome. She's a researcher down at Hopkins. She came through DCLSD. I will tell you in a minute, it was because of DCLSD that I was able to do all of this. I listened to Joy White, who's an interpreter for a Japanese company in Japan. And her mother was so proud. And that girl had been talking about going to Japan since she was 7. She's been there for 20 years now. So, listen to them, listen to your children, not trying to fight you, and have your information.
it was not going to be a voucher, because we know, that our Constitution in Virginia would not have permitted that, so it would have gone through an administrator. So, and even so, everybody who didn't want it to pass kept calling it a voucher, although they knew that not to be true. But again, it's the old, we're trying to hold on to power. And we're coming back though, because our children's future is at stake. And we've got to ensure that if they ask, what did you do for us? How did you fight for us? You knew I was failing. Did you fight? Did you help? Did you? Yes. We want them to know that we fought and we did everything we could so that we could make the decision on where to send our children to school.
Outstanding, outstanding. We're gonna get ready to end. We want to thank you all so much for coming to listen to this conversation. I do hope that your takeaway though is a choice is a good thing to have until you make up your mind. Okay? And on that note, I'm gonna bring CJ up.
Let's give a little round of applause for our panel. Seniors, teachers, this is really all for. Thank you. Thank you. So, next steps. I've always been big about having panel discussions, but what do we do after this? What do we do now? Hopefully everybody's inspired here from hearing the amazing stories up here. We want you all to go and sign up to join this movement and to be there for us in January, because we're going to work hard and ensure that we need to be where we need to be so we can get this done this coming January. So go to pathwayforprosperity.org. We have two different websites. Pathway for
Virginia.
Pathway for Virginia. Sorry, we have two different websites. Pathway for Virginia.org. Sign up, join our movement. We have predecessors there with VEOA, Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance. It was co-sponsored and started with Ben Knox for our team. They're doing some amazing work. We're partnering together. We need more partners to get this movement big. Ms. Virginia talked about it. It needs to be a movement. It needs to be big. We cannot take no for an answer. So please don't leave here until you sign up. There's VOA pamphlets outside. You can get those to learn more information about their work. But join us. We need you. This doesn't work without you. This doesn't work. And when you all join us, go find 10 more friends, 10 more family members, 10 more of your church members. This does not happen without your help. So thank you all again. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions tonight, but we're going to do more of these. But come January, let's get ready. We got to get ready. Can we get all your support? Can we get you to say we're going to get ready? Can we get you to say get ready?